Hey guys, how's it going? Cripparian here. Today I want to talk to you guys about the progression of a character from start to finish, because if you've played Path of Exile, you'd know that, what I've been talking about lately, what I've been talking about in terms of, endgame specs and all that, that's really just endgame, and a lot of people just tend to die in the early stages of the game, before they get to maps, before they get to farming Fell Shrine on Merciless. And I understand a lot of people are frustrated. So I know you guys see me play, and I tend to play a lot of Templars. The reason I play Templars is because I think they're very, very strong. They're very, very strong from start to finish, as opposed to some other classes, which is why I don't play them. Usually what you want to do when you first start a character is think about the skills that you want to use on a character. So, I'm making this wand thing, I kind of need this skills, I'm going to need to get these from quests, I'm going to need to get those from other players or other players who I'm playing with who can also get those from the quests. So you want to plan out the skills that you're going to use and where to get them. The gear will fall into place, and also you want to plan out the spec a little bit. Obviously there are some endgame specs, but very often when you see an endgame spec, you don't actually use those specs all the way up. For instance, when I played the Wand Templar in the hardcore race, I was melee until the end of Merciless because I didn't get any good wand gear, and it's much easier to get melee gear, so that's why I did that. And this is just kind of random character, it's just like a race character, so the spec is pretty messed up, but I want to show you guys kind of how you start off with a spec so you can see where it leads to when you end up finishing. The most important thing you have to keep in mind is that you can kill a mob, in an extra hit if you need to, if your DPS sucks, maybe an extra second hit. The large factor of your DPS is going to come from you having the right assortment of gems on an item. So you have like a 3 length for your support gems or a 4 length for your support gems. Not so much the stats on the item, but just the configuration of the gems so you can use the desired skill. And, having a pretty decent weapon or a decent piece of gear that'll help you do the damage, amplify the ability itself. Those two things are really going to have you do enough damage regardless of what kind of talent build you're running in most cases. What you got to be focused on is HP. If you're going to make a Templar, your goal is to get this talent right away. Discipline and trading. A lot of people die in the early parts of the game, like I said. Very often they die on Brutus. If you have the first one and the second one in terms of the life talents for the Templar, and you get 2 coral rings, which you'd want to get right away from the vendor. And when you're going to the game, you first talk to Nessa over here, you're like, how's it going? You click purchase items. You spend your first 3 Scroll of Wisdoms on a coral ring. You try to find another later in the game, but if you don't, go buy another one. When you're about to do Brutus, when you hit level 8, check for some belts. You want a leather belt. And then, if you hit level 9, check again if there wasn't one there at 8. If none there, maybe consider leveling to 10, put on a leather belt, put on all the gear that has the base life, and then get the few life talents that you need, and you'll be fine. So how does that really work? Well, if you're playing a melee Templar, which I do recommend in most cases, sometimes I go along the path up here if I'm going to play a caster, which is very dangerous at Brutus, but this is mostly for group play. You can start with a mana regen, elemental damage, elemental damage, elemental damage, elemental damage, int, mana, 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 and then you get to the HP nodes, and then catalyze, and then you go more HP nodes over here. Now, if you want to make a really basic character, really effective character, you just start off with the melee damage. So you go melee physical damage, melee physical damage. These 2 nodes are pretty weak. 6% in one node for your damage skill is actually not a very effective point. But because the one leading up to it is 12% and 20 strength, and 20 strength converts into 4 melee damage and HP, that's a pretty strong one. Very often I'd get precision, not for the accuracy part, because you don't really need accuracy in the early stages of the game, for the dexterity part, so you can use a larger, a more broad type of gear. You can use dex gear, you can use dex hybrid gear if you don't have dexterity on your gear already, and you can level up your phase run a little bit. So I like to get that early game and respec out of it later, but it's not a priority. The priority is life. You want to get all the life ones. So I go all the way up here, I get the little life one, then I can get the main life one. Discipline and training will give you a ton of life at the start. Plus 30 max life is insane at the start of the game. This is, in my opinion, one of the best life talents in the game, early game. You get that. Don't get the life regeneration because you don't need it. 1% of your total life is a very minuscule amount at that point. Then you go into Catalyze. This is when you get Lightning Strike, so you start like one-shotting everything. Then you go over here, you go into the fitness tree, and if you want to stay melee, you can rush to Resolute Technique, and then you can avoid all the decks, all the accuracy, and just hit every time. It works out very well. This is a race character, so I ended up getting some damage at this point because I didn't expect to get much higher than, like, the high 20s. But after you get Resolute Technique, or if you want to be a more caster type, you can go up top to get these life nodes. If you go up top, you can follow it up with those life nodes. Some people like these life nodes. I don't like them very much. Or, if you want a really, really tanky character right off the bat, you can start with a Marauder, and you just go all the life nodes, and then you can go down to these life nodes, or the life nodes up top. You always go straight for the life nodes. You always pick the life reward if you're going to be a life-based character off of the bandit quest. Keep your life as high as possible. Keep your resists as high as possible, and you'll make it through the game. If you do a little bit slower the first time, you can optimize a few things the next time, but just keep that in mind. And, most characters are capable of getting some life nodes. The Duelist has a few there as well. The Ranger is a little bit out of luck at the beginning. The Ranger is a very poor starting class, but, after you get a few levels, after you struggle past Brutus, you should be fine. There's plenty of life nodes in the lower part. Shadow does have, a little bit inferior, but still pretty decent life nodes. And Witch is really out of luck. Witch, you only have these 3, and then you have to get to quite a high level to increase your life from that. That's why I typically don't play witches. If I want a witch spec, I'll just start it with a Templar and make my way to the witch, which I have with my wand spec. So do the research, but try it out. Try it out the correct way. Get enough HP so you don't die through situations. Get enough resist so you don't get like frozen to death or shock stacked instantly to death. Make it work and enjoy the game. Hope you guys make it out. Make it up, alive out of the 1 week race if you're participating in it, and have a good time. See you guys tomorrow.